Now, should all children automatically be given the meningitis B vaccine? The former England rugby player Matt Dawson has published what he's called upsetting images of his toddler son Sammy in hospital with meningitis. Matt Dawson says Sammy is now well, but he is urging people to sign a petition calling for all children to be given the jab. Well, at the moment, babies get the vaccine, but parents who want to have older children vaccinated must pay privately, and it costs around £300. The petition was launched after the death on Valentine's Day of a 2-year-old girl from Kent, Faye Burdett, from meningitis. We'll show you the picture her parents released yesterday now, and it is distressing. So if you have young children in the room, you might not want them to see it, but her parents do want it released in order to raise awareness of meningitis. Well, her family say they are enduring a pain you cannot describe. Overnight, an online petition calling for all children to be given the vaccination has passed 400,000 signatories. Georgie Hall was just 23 months old when she contracted meningitis, and she died almost exactly a year ago. Georgie's father, Matt Hall, joins us from Norwich. We can also talk to Danny Sweatman, who lost 2 brothers to meningitis. His brother Joe died from meningitis C at just 7 weeks old, and his 19-year-old brother Ryan died from meningitis B while studying at Sheffield Hallam University. Since then, the family's raised over £80,000 for meningitis research. He joins us from Norwich, and we're also joined by Claire Donovan, the helpline manager at Meningitis Now. Thank you all very much for joining us. Matt, first of all, so sorry about the loss of your daughter Georgie. Tell us what happened.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, well, it's literally just coming up to the year anniversary now. On Sunday we'll be thinking about Georgie again, and it was just about this time last year that she went into hospital on the 18th of February, and she was a fit, healthy, young, bubbly little girl, our little princess, and within 3 days she lost the battle against meningitis.
What were the first signs?
Well, I was actually working away. It was my wife that was at home with her, and she actually woke up crying. She'd not long gone to bed, literally 2 hours later, woke up crying. She had a temperature, and her breathing more than anything was the thing that stood out for my wife. And the heavy breathing, different to the way she was normally breathing, and just very irregular. She then vomited, and the temperature started to rise a little bit more, but there was no rash, and that's the key sign that we make clear to people. There was no rash at this stage. That didn't actually come out until she made it to hospital.
And how long was that then after the initial symptoms?
It was between 5 to 6 hours after she'd suddenly woke up screaming, and then within 2 to 3 hours my wife got her to hospital, and then it was another 3 to 4 hours later that the rash started to develop.
And when was meningitis first mentioned?
I think at that stage, when the rash started to develop, there was a few blotches on sort of the top part of her body. They started to develop and become a little bit bigger, and then more started to develop over the top half of her body. And at that point, they felt that meningitis was the reason, and they started to treat her for meningitis at that stage.
And it obviously took hold very quickly of her tiny body.
It did, yeah. It was the meningococcal septicemia, which is the most severe strain of meningitis, and it was the septicemia, the blood poisoning, that actually took its toll on poor little Georgie.
Let's talk to Danny Sweatman. Danny, you lost 2 brothers to meningitis, one to meningitis B, one to meningitis C. Obviously just devastating for your family. Tell us more about your brothers and what happened.
Yes, it started back in 1991 when we lost our brother Joe. He was only 7 weeks old of pneumococcal meningitis. Similar kind of story, I suppose, to what Matt was saying there with my mum and dad at the time. Seeing those signs, rushing Joe to hospital, but unfortunately and absolutely devastatingly, it just took hold of him, and we lost him. Since then, we've been campaigning for people to understand the signs and the symptoms, yet just unbelievably 21 years later, my brother Ryan, who was only 19 years old, studying sports coaching at Sheffield Hallam University, he had just simple flu-like symptoms. Took himself to bed, and he didn't wake up in the morning, and that was meningococcal septicemia. It had taken over his body, and unfortunately he passed away during the night. And to happen to us as a family once, obviously, is just devastating, but to happen again in 2012, 21 years on after Joe passed away, is there are just no words, absolutely no words at all.
And obviously your family so conscious of the potential impact of meningitis, what it is, the symptoms, the fact that it happened to your second brother after the first one shows how quickly it can take hold, because in spite of being aware, obviously it did happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think although we've been, really promoting the signs and symptoms through the Meningitis Research Foundation and also, Meningitis Now, and there's some absolutely unbelievable material out there for both Joe and Ryan. It just came over too quickly. It was just all far too late and far too quick. And for us, the importance of the vaccines, the meningitis C that's already available, and now this huge push in the last 18 months, I suppose, for the meningitis B is for us just crucial, because yes, we can look out for these signs, but actually if we've got any chance of stopping this absolutely horrendous disease, then that's what we're really keen to campaign for.
Claire, there is now this campaign, so many people signing this petition to get the meningitis B vaccine rolled out. Just tell us what the situation is for it, because newborn babies get it, but that's it at the moment.
I mean, first of all, I'd just like to send our heartfelt sympathies to all families that have been bereaved through this horrible disease. Yes, and with regards to the new vaccine is the Men-B vaccine that people have been talking about recently. The Men-B is one of the strains of meningococcal meningitis, which causes most cases in the UK, and it's taken a very long time of research and development to get a vaccine available. The vaccine was introduced into the NHS Childhood Immunisation Programme on the 1st of September last year. It's being offered to young babies at 2, 4 and 12 months of age at the moment. But as people have said, it's not yet being offered to older babies.
Obviously, vaccination is one thing, and being aware of symptoms if somebody does get meningitis, another thing. Once meningitis takes hold, how difficult is it to actually
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing. Even with vaccinations, there is no vaccines to cover all types of meningitis, and not every vaccine is 100% effective. So it's really important that people understand what to look for with meningitis. And part of the problem with the early stages, and some of it you've already heard from the families that have been speaking, is the early stages can sometimes mimic more everyday type of infections. So things like vomiting, fever, sometimes muscular pains, a headache. But somebody that's developing bacterial meningitis will become ill very quickly, and other symptoms will appear. So things to look out for in those cases may be a really severe headache, severe muscular pains, stiff neck, dislike of bright lights. In smaller children, they may become very drowsy, lethargic, vomiting, refusing feeds. Very small babies might have the soft spot on the top of the head might be seen to be bulging. Temperature, but often with the temperature, the hands and feet will feel cold. And so these are some of the things to look out for. Somebody also mentioned the rash, and the rash with meningitis is quite a distinctive rash. It starts off like little pinpricks under the skin and then can develop very quickly to look like purple bruising. But one of the things which one of the members has already said is the rash doesn't appear for everybody, and in many cases when it does appear, it appears as quite a late sign. So we urge everybody not to just think of a rash when they think of meningitis. If you're at all concerned of the symptoms that somebody has, trust your own instincts and get them seen by a doctor as soon as possible.
Matt, would you like to see your kids routinely vaccinated?
Without a doubt. I don't think it should even be coming into question. There's far too many lives being taken as a result of this vaccine. I think it would save so many lives, and maybe if Georgie had been lucky enough to get it, she'd still be here today.
And Danny, I know that as a result of what's happened to your family, you paid privately to have your child vaccinated, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Maxwell's my son. He's now coming up to 2 years old, and as soon as the vaccine came available privately, obviously he missed the immunisation programme, but you know, straight away we took him to a travel clinic and made sure that he had the vaccine. You've already mentioned the cost, around sort of £300, which for me is just such a huge stumbling block for many families across the UK. You know, seeing certainly the recent news with Faye and Matt's son Sammy, you know, people are going to be wanting to vaccinate their children more, yet at that cost it's going to stop a lot of people being able to do it. A further issue to that, I've got friends and colleagues now who have tried to go privately, and there's a waiting list as well. Some of the places are now struggling to, you know, get hold of that vaccine. So rolling it out across the UK is something that we are absolutely desperate to push, and you know, this petition at the moment is something that I'm just desperately keen to get out to everyone, you know, who's watching and listening today to sign.
Matt, you're nodding as you're listening there to Danny.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people that have been to go and get the vaccine for the little ones, but recently we've started to get some feedback that they are struggling to find places that have got it in stock, and there is a shortage of the vaccine, and they can't even go and pay the sort of the large amounts of money to go and get them vaccinated. So it is something that needs to be addressed, and needs to be addressed quickly.
Claire, obviously people are talking about this as a result of the just terribly sad cases that there have been. Do you have much hope that the situation with vaccination might change? Because obviously it's going to be expensive for the NHS for this vaccine to be made routinely available.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly as an organisation, we would like to see an extension of the vaccine programme to other age groups that are at risk. And as somebody's already mentioned, there is a problem at the moment with private supplies, and partly that's due to global demand as well. So, you know, it is a difficult situation at the moment.
And in terms of treatment, is that improving?
Treatment, I mean, certainly the main thing with meningitis is getting it recognised early and getting antibiotics into the child or the adult that has the meningitis as soon as possible, and that can be really life-saving. There are cases, though, even when it's diagnosed early, treatment is started straight away, that it doesn't change the outcome, sadly, for some people. It just can overwhelm the body so quickly.
Claire, Danny and Matt, thank you all very much for joining us.